Today we will test 10 very interesting and extremely fascinating myths from the game Minecraft. Can lava save your life when falling from a very great height? What happens if you turn a pillager with a banner upside down? How big is the largest nether portal? And much more in this episode. Get ready to be absolutely amazed, and I'm definitely starting now. The first myth tells us that you can hide from a dynamite explosion behind a regular shield, which will either partially or completely block the incoming damage. At the same time, you need to maintain a small distance and activate the shield itself. Let's test this. And we can almost certainly and confidently say that the myth is debunked. However, to be absolutely and completely sure, let's try holding the shield in the right hand. We light dynamite and the effect is the same. The myth is definitely debunked. However, there is a similar myth that a small block between you and the dynamite in such a way that the impact is either partially or completely absorbed by the block. And now this myth is indeed very functional and useful. This particular mechanic has been present in the game since its very initial development. The second myth states that if an archer kills a creeper in the game, a very rare music disc most certainly drops from the creeper, and this absolutely needs to be tested. We build a narrow corridor, place an archer and a creeper, and watch as he kills it. And in the end, it turns out to be true. A music disc does drop from the creeper. Let's listen to it. The myth is absolutely and definitely confirmed. The third myth states that it is commonly believed that lava can save you from falling from a very high altitude. Lava is, in a mechanical sense, very similar to water, but in reality, this is not the case at all, in fact. Lava is molten rock, and its density is significantly higher than that of water, so in fact, theoretically, the player should actually crash into it. Let's test this. We fall down and see a quite logical result. Sometimes we inevitably crash. I would definitely say the myth is very much busted. However, there is one amusing mechanic. If you jump before falling into the lava, for some reason that I don't quite fully and somewhat understand, the lava will cushion the fall. And in theory, you can actually even stay alive. So the myth is confirmed. The third myth is based on the legendary legend that a portal to the void serves as a passage for a colossal dragon and its army. This truly means it can be enormous. But how enormous can it be made? Let's check it. We'll start with the small values of 4, 8 and 12 cubes. Everything works out easily here. The same goes for 18 cubes. Let's move on to something more substantial. 22 cubes. This portal is truly enormous, but even it can be lit without any problems. 23 cubes were no exception and opened easily as well. But when trying to light 24 cubes, the game doesn't allow us to do it. So indeed, 23 cubes is the limit. But this only concerns the width of the portal. What about the height? It's the same here. 23 cubes wide, 23 cubes high. This is the maximum size you can achieve. The portal is truly gigantic. So, the myth is confirmed. There used to be a legendary myth that if you find clay in the river and start digging a hole under it, you will indeed, in fact, definitely find diamonds. With the emergence of new regions, there are now many such places. Therefore, I cannot say for certain whether this myth was ever a reality. From my side, I need to verify it. I spent a significant amount of time and excavated 8 through holes in various different locations and areas, and I found diamond deposits in only one of them, which I would attribute more to coincidence than to a pattern. The myth said that indeed it is highly likely the probability of finding diamonds underneath the clay is 80%, so there is indeed a chance that I was just unlucky. However, I am more inclined to believe that this feature is no longer relevant. Myth number 6. It is often believed that if you place any block on ice, the same sliding effect will apply to that block, regardless of its type or material. If this myth turns out to be true, it could greatly diversify the creative process of construction. Therefore, I was obliged to test it. For the sake of the experiment, I prepared different materials. I did not achieve this effect on sand in any way. The same goes for dirt at all whatsoever. Wood was no exception, nor was gravel. I was already disappointed and ready to debunk this myth, thinking it was just another baseless claim. But then I had the idea to try it on small blocks, which seemed like a last-ditch effort. And wow, to my utter surprise, it worked remarkably well. I slide on the wooden floor as if it were ice, so the myth is definitely confirmed. Myth number 7. An Enderman will not attack you if you are in fact actually wearing a pumpkin head. In Minecraft, there are many different heads, and their purpose is to reduce your detection radius. But the myth is that, in fact, these Enderman creatures will not actually attack you at all if you are wearing a pumpkin head. There is logic in this, as the Enderman is not from our world and does not understand monsters. Let's definitely test this. Put on the mask and he really doesn't care. You can look directly at him, in the eyes, approach him, move him. He won't attack you unless you start first. So the myth is absolutely, certainly, indeed, definitely confirmed. Myth number 8. If you add extra doors and beds for the village residents, they will indeed start to reproduce much more actively. The logic here is that the residents will perceive the doors and beds as new houses. And if there are new houses, it means it's time to have offspring. This feature is quite interesting and needs to be tested. I really carefully placed 10 new doors and 15 new beds, and then started waiting. 10 game days later, I decided to recount all the residents, and it turned out that there were approximately 12 residents in total before the experiment, and after the experiment, there were ultimately 11, meaning one resident unfortunately even disappeared. I will not conduct a search operation, and I will simply state that the myth is indeed definitely busted. The 9th myth is tied to a music disc, which is a popular and well-known music disc called Cat. According to the legend, after the melody ends, another one called Dog should start playing. It's quite interesting. It absolutely definitely needs to be checked. I played the melody several times and listened really carefully to every note, but I never heard the dog melody. I even checked with different discs to rule out all possible options, but to no avail. Maybe I did miss something, but the myth is debunked. 10th myth. What happens if you name a bandit the notorious and infamous standard bearer, the well-known and legendary Graham? The idea is that this should essentially turn him upside down. And then the question ultimately arises, if he walks on his head, where will the banner go? It will definitely go underground or replace his legs. We will find out now. We create a tag with this name and apply it to the bandit for further processing and validation. And yes, a tag with such a name indeed turns him upside down. However, the banner goes underground because it doesn't have a physical model. But still, the myth is confirmed. And with that, my dear ones, that's all. A huge support for my channel would be your subscription. This will allow me to release content more frequently and make it higher quality.